I'm Jan. I'm with DAD Audio, and you have become my victim for me to show you the control pack functionality in this system we have based on all of our wonderful DAD products. So, what's your background?
Audio post-production.
Audio post-production, right? Okay. So, what I'm going to show you has a lot to do with very, very fast switchover times. So we use a lot of that in live. We use a lot of that in events, theaters, live, house of worship, any of those things. Because like a lot of channels have to go from a playback system or a broadcast system, and if we have one of our inputs interfaces fail, we want to be able to switch to something either manually or with the help of automation, right? So essentially, our system is these inputs. These two DAD Port 256 is set up as a main playback rig, an a B playback rig, which is kind of the backup. These are all connected on a format we call DAD-Link, which is a high-speed digital version of keeping everything together. And then the software functionality on top of like everything that our products have always been able to do, which is a bunch of different inputs and outputs switched. So like this little half unit thing has 256 Thunderbolt connections to a computer, low latency, 7 samples only, 256 downside connections, 64 MADI connections. You can add another 128 MADI connections. And you also, if you have like some old school equipment that you really enjoyed, like using ADAT on, there's also 32 connections of ADAT. Those digital connections are available on every one of our products. The bigger products then also have the opportunity to put in like analog in and out. But we're going to focus on just what this particular thing is able to do in a very, very short amount of time. So essentially, in a playback situation, I would have a Ableton Live running a bunch of tracks that maybe the band's going to play to them, or they're like a full playback system. 32 channels of audio. I need a way to make sure that if this computer crashes or I get buffering or any of these things, I need a way to be able to look at that, say, this is no longer working, switch to my backup, which is also being tested all the time to see if this is working or not. So what we're doing is we're sending a couple of tones. One is like a normal pilot tone that you use in audio, in broadcast, which is like, if we're going to send a pilot tone to the broadcast truck. If it doesn't come back, it means we're not connected anymore. Same principle applies here. Sending a pilot tone and a digital integrity tone, which we call AE6, to the machines. The pilot tone will say, oh yeah, we're running. The AE6 will say, well, every single sample that I send out then comes back has to be the same. So this particular box sends out the tone over the Thunderbolt into my Ableton session, and then turns around and comes all the way back. And when it comes back, we can look at the inputs in the detectors and say what I've sent out came back or it didn't. If it didn't come back, it will say switch away from this because this is no longer working. In practicality, it allows me to make a routing preset of a bunch of inputs and outputs. So let's say this was a broadcast situation. I'm setting up for a live show. I have 32 channels here, 32 channels there. I'm gonna make some buckets of inputs to saying this is a valid input bucket, which is coming from Thunderbolt. This other input is coming from this other machine, moved over via this DAD-Link I was talking about. These two are now the buckets I can switch between. Now in my situation, I'm also like, we're playing a really important show. I also need to have a third backup, but I don't have another multi-track machine. All I have is, in my case, Jennifer Warren's playing on my Apple Music. So taking all of these signals into consideration, I'm gonna give them the opportunity to make the change for me based on a couple of criteria, right? If this one is right, good, use this one. If this one fails, go away from that one. And in all practicality, what's going to happen here is that machine is going to look at the states that I asked it, say, yes, this one works, this one doesn't work, and it will switch for me. I can start by doing it manually. So if you listen to this happen. So now, manually, I'm switching 32 channels on one sample only between two machines, and you're not hearing it. I'm doing the whole switch at one sample, 8, and then switch to Jennifer Warren's, right? So I set up all these criteria and say, you know what? I actually want you to be able to do it without me having to interact with it, because if this computer crashes and I'm having a water, 40,000 people might be like listening to 3 seconds of silence, right? So you don't want that. So I will set all these criteria up. I would say, change to green, and then you make the decision, and you make it within that one sample. So when I'm starting this up, you'll see anything that's red is not a valid source, and it will switch away from the source that is not valid, and you will not hear it happen unless it switches away from the main backup and into the third one. That is what happens. That is the automatic switching failover system, which we're also now using to say, well, if we have a lot of channels coming in from a studio or from a recording session, and we lose that interface, let's say we're losing the MADI connection, I will have that digital link done. So if we lose the MADI connection, instead of just telling me that we lost the MADI connection, I will say, oh, I was going to switch to the Dante connection. And then no one is losing any time, any sleep. Everyone is still working. That is essentially what the control pack does. And it's for 256 channels in 4 buckets. That is one preset. Every single one of these boxes can do 32 presets running simultaneously. So you can have one that switches the backtracks. You can have one that switches the, talkbacks between studios. Happens automatically or manually. And all of those things you can set up either in software or on hardware for you to keep control of your show and make sure that no one's losing any sleep. That was the whole pitch.
Thank you.
Jack, thank you for coming.